All right, we're back. Part two, finishing up our trilogy of movie reviews, and we're here with the third film, Whiplash. And I am correct; it was a 2014 movie.
Interstellar came out 2014.
That's crazy. That's not what we're talking about.
All right. So Gio explained. What did Gio explain? Oh, Gio explained Barbarian. I explained Bullet Train. Dom, explain Whiplash for us.
Alright. So we begin with Whiplash with our main protagonist, Andrew Neiman, who is an aspiring drummer. He plays drumming, and he basically has this whole gist that he basically wants to become the best of the best. So the movie begins off with him at what was it? It's a conservatory of music in New York. He's currently studying at the moment. I believe he's studying at the moment, and it begins off with him drumming, like by himself in a small room, and he's like going at it, right? He's going crazy, he's going at it, and then as he's drumming, we get an appearance of Mr. Fletcher, Terrence Fletcher, who's basically I'm not sure how to call him, the conductor. Basically, one of the legendaries per se, in terms of drumming and with his methodical ways of teaching, if that makes sense, his very controversial ways of teaching. Fletcher gets a look at him, and gets a hear at how he plays. Neiman shows his skills, but Fletcher ultimately just declines and just walks out. Neiman's just sad, and I think he just goes ahead to watch a movie with his dad. That is until the next day, where Neiman goes along to play at his band, where he's technically rivaled up with the sort of jockey guy. His name is Connolly.
Carl Tanner.
Let's call him Connor. I think it's Connolly or Connor. I forget. Let's call him Connor for the time. Oh, Connor, my bad. So basically, they're playing, and then at the time, they're just playing around. Not playing around. They're just setting up. They're playing, tuning their instruments. They start playing a couple of instruments here and there. Neiman gets a chance to go on the drums for a bit, and then bada bing, bada boom. Terrence Fletcher comes walking in the room. He sets aside the music teacher for the time being and starts seeing how the band plays. I would assume that at this point in time he's trying to pick out his next target to trying to put into his band. So he starts playing specifically saxophones, trombones, trumpets, and then he goes immediately afterwards looking at the drums, picks out Connor or Connolly, doesn't like him, chooses Neiman, and he's able to perfectly play the part. And then he picks him to play on his band. And so he tells him to come in tomorrow, or I think on Monday at 6 in the morning. Don't be late. He goes, although he gains confidence. A major plot point, a major plot that part of the story that you start to see within Neiman is that with the little bits of confidence that he gains, he starts to smile a bit more and more. But we start to see that confidence will soon later die down immediately. And so, the next day, he's late. He doesn't make it on time. However, he's a couple minutes late. However, he notices that regardless that he's late, he still stays. And although, how would you say it? He is kind of, playing with new players. He doesn't have no idea who they are. He starts to lose the confidence of it. He's playing with new people who are professionals, who've been in the world, with the discipline that Fletcher has been giving him. However, he still stays put, and he still tries to play the part. Fletcher obviously does his thing. He begins off. However, it is specifically this one other player that is doing wrong, and now we get to see the ways of Fletcher and how he actually manages to discipline his band. He notices that one player is off, not Neiman, because Neiman's not playing at the time. He specifically targets this one player who's, I believe, on trombone. He's telling him, he's not specifically looking at him, but he's specifically looking at a set of players whose tone might be off. He's looking, he's telling a specific group to play, telling a specific group to play, but he's still saying that there's a specific person who's not purposely, but they're sabotaging the band because they don't know what is wrong. And he specifically targets this one dude in the trombone and basically berates him. He physically, not physically, he psychologically breaks his mind down into thinking that he was off tune. And then at the end, he kicks him out, saying that he's not in the band anymore, that he's sabotaging. And that entire time, that player was always in tune. He was perfect. That it was another player this whole time. But it was the trombone player himself that didn't know that he was off in tune the whole time. That was, that was pretty much overall the whole entire psychological game that Fletcher wants to impose. And so, seeing this and just the grotesque nature that Fletcher has onto his students shows Neiman that he cannot mess around. He has to do everything perfect and by the book, or improvise, whenever needed. And so Neiman gets called up to be to play as I don't think he's called up as the core, but he's basically there to begin playing. He begins to play the drums a bit along with the rest of the band. They start doing well for a little bit until one specific area of the I believe they're playing Caravan doesn't do so well. He starts to try to get it right the first time. Fletcher stops him. He tries to get it right the second time. Fletcher stops him. Fletcher gives him, a bit of ease in terms of discipline. Like, not quite my tempo. We'll start from again. But after the fourth, the fifth, the sixth time, he starts getting a little bit more angry. He's like, okay, I don't want you to sabotage my band. And so we start to see slowly, ever so slowly, him becoming more and more just angry. And it gets to a point where Fletcher hurls a chair at Neiman, and Neiman dodges. Thankfully, he didn't get hurt. But then, Fletcher gets up and close, up to, close centimeters away from, Neiman's face. And Fletcher basically begins to break down Neiman. Essentially, constantly, through face slapping and constant questioning and caution, constant, how would you say it? What was it? To get everything right, per se. And throughout that entire time, through all the questioning, through all the little disciplines that Neiman's been put through, Neiman actually gets it right. Throughout the entire film, we're led to believe that Fletcher actually knows better, and Fletcher knows that Neiman's wrong the entire time. But in reality, Neiman was perfect on the dot whenever asking each question. But that's the whole point for Fletcher to discipline his students, to constantly make them think and ponder if they themselves know that they're right, instead of just getting proper good job when they need not hard. Fletcher's way of harsh discipline is how he rolls. And so it gets to a point where Neiman starts to cry, and Fletcher basically tells him, you're upset, scream that you're upset, and now Neiman is now embarrassed. He's sad, he's embarrassed, he's upset, he's embarrassed himself as being literally the new student first day already in front of everybody else who he doesn't know, but that still implies much about him, that he's quick to be broken down, being introduced to this sort of way of teaching by the Fletcher man. So afterwards, he's told to basically practice harder, keep going faster. How would you say it? I remember. Going further on, I believe Neiman keeps on practicing, and he gets a hold to, along with a new girlfriend, who he has met recently at the movie theaters, who was recently working the concessions, and they just start to get together. And so Neiman starts to get together. He's happy with that. He gains a bit more confidence, He's practicing a bit more. However, he's noticing he's definitely putting himself through more stress as he's beginning to get blisters on his hands. The faster he goes, and it's getting more difficult for him. But he still pushes on. He still keeps pushing forward, even through all the blood and like through the bandages that like they're like oh. I personally love the imagery of the bandages. It gets to you. Anyways. What happened? Oh yeah, basically he keeps practicing a bit more, and then we see, what was it? What was that afterwards? I believe, what happened afterwards? I believe we get an introduction of Connor, or Connolly, my bad, that he gets put onto the team, if I remember correctly. And now this is a sort of pinpoint where we start to see.
Not yet, no.
What was it?
I mean, dude, you don't have to go like point for point for everything that happened in the movie. You can just, skip around if you want. I don't know.
Okay, I'll skip around. We get to the concert. Where basically we're introduced to the Whiplash song. Yeah, the Whiplash.
The title of the movie.
Yeah, the title of the movie. However, Neiman messes up. Neiman forgets a folder that he was supposed to place down and quickly pick it back up. I don't think the story ever tells you where that folder ever went. I think because he literally just places the folder on a chair, grabs a soda from the vending machine, and it just immediately just disappears. And we would have at least heard some footsteps. If it would have been Fletcher, it would have literally been, you would have probably scared them or scared Neiman of it. So, personally, I do not know how that folder just happens to disappear in the span of a second. But, it is what it is. And then we're led to, Neiman taking the part as the core drummer instead of the original drummer who was meant to be playing. Because apparently, Neiman at the time was able to completely remember it by heart, remember the tempo, remember the rhythm. And he plays it. What happens afterwards, if I remember correctly?
Neiman takes the starting spot, the core spot.
He takes the starting spot, and I believe, Fletcher becomes happy with it. Then we get like a scene of him, of Neiman coming back home. He gets with his family, and it becomes this sort of family dispute of like other people being better than him. Like I believe his brothers are like star football players with scholarships and all this stuff. The best of the best. Fit. The average fit jockey.
Well, not
sort of
the best of the
stereotype.
best. They're like Division 3, I think.
Yeah, they were Division 3.
Yeah, Division 3. Yeah, but right. And then Neiman starts fighting with them verbally. And then I believe he gets told off, kind of, not really, and then he just leaves the table and it just sort of like, and not embarrasses him, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's that scene that you learn basically like his whole motivation is just being the best,
Yeah.
And like, though it's kind of I guess you could say pretentious in a way, it's like he does try and view himself like better than other people,
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, continue on. Then we get to the part with the Connolly man, who gets introduced to play the part. I forget which song was it, but basically Fletcher brings in Connolly, which is basically the rival of Neiman, telling him to play a specific part, and he wants to test out which out of the two can be the core for the time being, to see who is the best for the band. And he tests out a new song that Neiman's never played, he's never practiced, and he immediately starts to worry, and then we can start to see that Connolly begins to ease up and plays even better than than how Neiman can. Neiman gets angry, and then we begin to get to see anger coming from him, and he's just like he snaps, stating screw Connolly. He earned that part, not this guy. However, it immediately cuts with a phone call coming in from for Fletcher, it completely cuts to him just, going to his room. Neiman's getting sort of angry, like, I earned that part. And then Fletcher immediately just rejects him, saying, not now, this is not the time. And it's kind of depressing what happens afterwards, but, it is what it is. And if I remember correctly, well, what happens afterwards?
Then they have the competition between the three drummers, to see who can actually play the part necessary for the song.
Oh, right.
And it leads to what was it, I don't know, a 5-hour session or something like that, where it's just the three of them alternating off the drums, trying to see who can play the part at the tempo Fletcher wants them to.
And I believe it's Neiman that got it, if I correct.
Yeah, right? Neiman gets it, and then the day of the concert, Neiman's sort of running late to the concert. He has to get a rental car. He ends up leaving his sticks at the rental place inside his actual car, which I don't remember why he couldn't take his actual car. Was it that it had problems or something? I don't remember. I don't think it's ever mentioned, but so he gets to the place, and he was kind of a bit late already. Oh, he didn't have a car, that's right. Yeah, no, so he had to go get a rental, and he ends up leaving the sticks there. When he gets to the place, he's already kind of late, and so he sees, I think it's Connolly warming up for the part, and, Fletcher's telling him, I'm not going to let a guy who doesn't even have his own sticks be here. And so he's like, that's my part. I'll be right back. Just give me 5 minutes. And so he drives all the way back to the place, gets his sticks, and he's rushing over because they're like, dude, we're almost getting on stage. Where you at? And he's like, just tell Fletcher I'll be there. And then boom, he gets hit by a car. And you see him kind of suffering the effects of the car crash. You see him finally come to, what's it called? We see him, we see him sort of recovering. When he finally comes to, he doesn't even care about his own health, the fact that he could be severely injured. He just goes straight to the concert, and he walks onto the stage, and, you can clearly tell he's a bloody mess and all that. And he's still trying to push through, but you can clearly see him losing composure throughout it because of, the adrenaline wearing off and the pain finally settling in, and, sort of just showing that, he can't play because of the fact that he was just in a car crash,
Yeah. And then afterwards, as he's playing, in the middle of the act, we see that he's basically giving up. Or in other words, not giving up, he's struggling to keep on pushing forward. And then it gets to a point where Fletcher basically kicks him out in middle of them performing. Neiman gets angry, and then Neiman just goes to an absolute fit of rage and then attacks Fletcher to the ground. And then just tries to hit him, but security holds him back last minute. And basically, he's basically telling Fletcher to, F off the entire time. And then we get basically a fast forward, and we see that Neiman is now somewhat recovered. He's pretty much recovered. There's no stains and stuff like that. And he's basically saying he's talking to would assume a lawyer, an attorney, to basically speak out on the ways of Fletcher's just behavior and sort of discipline.
Dom, do you want to use this time to mention the news that was revealed earlier?
Oh, yes. Okay, so my apologies. I missed this part. So, in the middle of the fight with Connolly and Neiman, there was this one specific moment where Fletcher had to take a phone call. During that phone call, it was stated and noted that, with unfortunate news, that one of Fletcher's old students from before has unfortunately died in a car accident. Now, that's what we're told initially. We'll get on later to what happens afterwards. And what happens afterwards is that this particular student didn't actually they didn't get hit by a vehicle in a vehicular accident. What actually happened, as what the attorney states, that this student actually committed suicide. And what this implies is the unfortunate fact that this student, who is from Fletcher's, has taken so much discipline, so much, just, I guess, harsh punishment, per se, that it just abuse from Fletcher that's gotten to the point where he unfortunately couldn't think that he's as good as he was, and the poor guy unfortunately committed suicide. But it comes to show that Fletcher is willing to hide his mistakes just to not make him seem as bad as they are. When it was him, he was the main cause to the poor guy to commit suicide. It's honestly pretty depressing, but it shows, the underlying tone per se. And then Neiman gets a hold of this information, and with the attorney, he basically anonymously states the truth of Neiman's, Fletcher's way of teaching, which basically results to Fletcher getting kicked off from the school and not being a teacher anymore. So now he's just basically a free man on his own thing. Still obviously pursuing music, but yeah. We go fast forward to now Neiman living more of a simple life. I believe he's just, I don't recall if he's just continuously just living school, but he's living alone. He's cleaned up everything. He's stored away
his drumming stuff.
He stored away his drumming stuff. He works at a coffee shop. He's basically lived his life simply, completely ignored drumming. However, he keeps getting these little little advertisements for these jazz places, and then he specifically goes to this one jazz spot that specifically had Fletcher's name. He went along to this little club, this little gathering, and he sees Fletcher playing the piano so perfectly in this little 3 or 4 man band. And he just stays and watches. Steeman just stays and watches Fletcher just doing his own thing, saying that he's a pianist. This whole entire time, he was a pianist this whole time. Or at least we know that he's just very good at the piano. And it's all the way until at the end that Fletcher catches a glimpse of Neiman and calls him in. Neiman and Fletcher basically have a talk. They're just talking it out. They're talking about what's going on. Fletcher understands what is, his harsh ways, but a specific line from the story that is important is that one line. I can't say it line by line, but I recall that you can't teach discipline by simply saying, "Oh, good job, you're doing so great, keep it up," right? Fletcher does the complete opposite of that and constantly berates them, even if they're right, even if the other person is right in what they're saying or stating or achieving or whatever. He still tries to prove them wrong. And
I'm trying to remember what's the word. I can't remember. Hold on, continue. Let me try to remember the word because I'm trying to think of because he does this style of teaching to prevent this one sort of word. I'm trying to remember what's the word. Continue, Dom, while I think of it.
Yeah, so basically he keeps pushing. The reason why Fletcher does this, he basically berates the students so they can become the best of the best. He specifically notes a story where there's two famous musicians, and one of them didn't like how the other one was playing, and so he basically throws a cymbal at his head. He uses that little momentum of that little, bit of humiliation, the other player. And he uses that, the fact that he got hit with the cymbal. The guy didn't essentially quit jazz, but he used that moment of the humiliation, that moment of desperation, that moment of just, damn, I just got hit. I'm humiliated in front of this audience. What do I do? He instead uses that momentum to turn it all the way around to become the best of the best, so as that moment won't ever happen again. And I think Bird was meant to be born. I forget his name, but something Bird was to be one of the most legendary players of our time, and that's pretty much the story that Fletcher is trying to get at Neiman, and Neiman understands. And basically, they talk it off. Everything seems fine between them, although there are some underlying truths that the other doesn't know about. And it is all the way until they leave the premises, and then, Fletcher being Fletcher, he needs somebody to play the drums for his upcoming new set of band members for his new band per se. Ever since he's been kicked off from the group, from the school per se, and so now Andrew is given the choice of whether continuing on with a simple life or continuing back on track to the horrible nature that is Fletcher's teachings. Neiman goes along and basically just says, you know what, let's do it. He goes along, he goes ahead, he gets set up with a new crew of band members. And it's he starts to gain confidence again. Thinking that he could do it. What happens afterwards? If I remember correctly, this being the JVC festival, I believe he tries to invite his girlfriend or his ex-girlfriend after they broke up, thinking.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't even think they started dating.
Oh, I don't think they. Yeah, they didn't really much dating. It was barely like.
They went on one date pretty much, and then because he was always going to be serious about music. He was like, "Hey, oh wait, they did? Oh, we just don't see it. Okay, no, never mind. I take it back. Okay." What's it called? But yeah, he invites her to that concert thing, and just as it's about to begin, and what's it called? Fletcher's doing like the introductions to the crowd. He reveals that the first song they're doing is one that Neiman doesn't have sheet music to. And so he's looking all confused, and Fletcher kind of just gives him a... Wait, no, I think we forgot. Doesn't it, like, right before they walk on stage, Fletcher...
No, when he's at the drums, he comes over and he says, I know it was you who told, the people about what I did, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and that's when he goes, introduces the new song, and that's when Neiman realizes he's somewhat been set up, because like he doesn't have the sheet music for this, and Fletcher's kind of just looking at him like, "Hey, improvise, kid. Let's see if you can figure this out." And so of course he just plays a bunch of randomness that doesn't fit with the song, and Neiman kind of feels embarrassed. He walks off a stage after that, and then his dad meets him backstage. And he gives him a hug, and kind of like how Dom was saying about like the whole symbol thing, throwing it and all that, because that's the one thing that's the one thing we got to mention. So when Fletcher gives a speech to his band, like right before they go up on the stage to do this concert, he tells him, this could either make or break your career, because people are going to remember this one sort of performance and either remember you for being absolutely terrible or absolutely amazing. And so it's like this moment embarrasses Neiman, because it's like, all people are going to remember is this guy had no clue what he was playing up there with a group of professionals ruining their performance and all that. But, after hugging his dad, Neiman goes back out there and someone take over. I forget what happened. I know he starts playing, but I forget, like...
When he is pretty much, he remembers what Fletcher told him, that like a person who actually wants to be the best would never... be like discouraged enough to just stop. So he remembers that while he's hugging his dad. He goes back onto the drum set, and then while Fletcher's apologizing to the crowd for his obvious bad performance, he starts playing the drums, doing his own thing. And then Fletcher looks over, he's like, "Yo, what are you doing?" And then he's like doing his own thing, and then he tells the string dude to his right, "I'll cue you in. Just be ready for it." And then he starts playing this thing, and then he starts. I think he plays Caravan, and then but he pretty much takes over Fletcher's band, and then Fletcher's like, "Yo, what are you doing, man? Stop doing it." But then he's like, "F you, I'm gonna do my own thing. Like, I'm not gonna let you ruin this for me." And then Fletcher realizes that, yo, this guy's onto something. So then he gets the rest of the band ready, the horns and everything. He's like, all right, and everyone starts playing, and then they finish the song, and it's like, all right, so then Fletcher goes up to the mic, he's like, all right, we're going to play something slower now, but then Dean was like, no, F that, we're going to do what I want, and then he starts doing his drum solo, and then he goes absolutely insane, he goes bonkers on the drums, and then Fletcher's like, yo, this guy, he could be my, what bird person? I don't remember his name, but he could be the best, like my best student that I've ever taught. So then he's like, all right, he starts kind of like guiding him a little bit. He's like, all right, slow it down. All right, bring it up now. and then they started jamming out, and then he kind of like redeems himself to Charlie Parker. Yeah, he redeems himself to the audience by proving that he's actually a competent drummer, and then after his solo, they get ready for the next song, which is Whiplash, and then we don't actually get to see Whiplash because that's when the movie ends, and that's pretty much that last bit is pretty much the creation of pretty much Neiman turning into his version of Charlie Parker, like one of the greats, or one of like potential to be one of the greats, and that's pretty much how the movie ends.
Yeah, and it leaves it open ended. It's like, does he become the best? Does he not? Does it overwhelm him like his previous student? Does it not? I mean, previously, like in the movie, he says something about like dying young, but like going down as one of the greatest. And Dom, the thing that I was alluding to earlier, I finally figured out. All right, I remembered the phrase or word. Fletcher has this harsh sort of teaching style because he wants to prevent people from basically being complacent in their passions and in their ventures. He doesn't want them. He doesn't want to breed complacency, because it's like he thinks telling someone good job makes them become complacent. Because they hear good job and they think, oh, I'm fine, I'm doing well. I don't need to improve at anything. Whereas constantly pushing them the way he does will constantly push them to become greater, to constantly try and evolve, constantly try and improve. But then obviously we see with one of his students where it leads to, where it's like it can lead them to a point where they never think they're good enough, and it can sadly lead to them taking their own life because they have it in their mind that, I'm never going to be good enough. No matter what amount of work I put in, I'll never be as great as good enough. They kind of reach this point where it's like they're striving for a never ending goal, and so it's like you see the benefits of it, where it's like you push someone, past their limits in a way, to the point where, they're striving for this greatness. They're not being complacent in their, in their skills, because that's kind of what he was trying to get Neiman to do throughout the movie. Because like Dom said, there was points where, he'd let himself get too confident and not realize, his mistakes, or that, that he can improve, or that he can be replaced at any point, and instead it's like, that's what he was pushing him to realize, is like, you got to always constantly go out and prove you're the best. But then we also see the downside, where it's like, dude, it can lead to, people taking their own lives because they have this sort of mentality that, it's all for nothing in a way, that they never just get to a point of, how would you say it? Basically, it's just a never-ending goal. The goalpost is always being moved anytime they achieve something.
I feel like there's like because it turns like Dom had mentioned it, like during like the first thing when he first gets to Fletcher's band, he's like, dude, as soon he was like he was confident. You could see him get confident. At first he's nervous, but then as soon as he starts playing, he sees that Fletcher's jamming out to what he's playing. So like, oh, obviously I'm doing a good job. He gets comfortable, and I think Fletcher, he doesn't like that, because as soon as he gets comfortable being in his band, and as you're saying, he obviously thinks he's good enough already to be here, and then that's when that's when Fletcher, obviously, he's like, all right, this guy's getting a little bit too comfortable here. Let me break his confidence, and that obviously causes him to try even harder. Because I saw, like, according to people, Neiman was actually correct. He wasn't rushing or dragging. He was actually playing it right. But because Fletcher was like in his face, screaming at him, slapping him, he literally lost the confidence of knowing whether or not he was right. Kind of like the other guy, where he was on the correct note, but because he didn't know that he was on the correct note, he's like, I don't know what I'm doing here anymore. That's why he got rid of him. It's pretty much the same thing. It's just like, he doesn't want people, like as you're saying, he doesn't want people to be comfortable at where they're at. So he gets in their face. He like puts them on the spot, makes them uncomfortable, makes them feel very anxious, with like, you know, this bald guy is just yelling at in your face. He's throwing chairs at you. He's slapping you, and you're just like, dude, like, so I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna say that I'm wrong because obviously something's not right. That's why. I don't know. That's the whole thing with like, and like the cool thing about Whiplash is because it's not like Neiman randomly became the best. It's not like he just started playing better than he could. Throughout the movie, we see Neiman put in the work. He's in his room. He literally moves all of his stuff from his dorm into the practice room. He's literally sleeping in there. He's always listening to music every chance he gets. He's listening to the songs that he's performing. He's studying. You know, he's putting in that work. He's bleeding. His arms are like all ripped apart because of all the stuff that he's doing. He's literally dumping his hands in the ice buckets to, you know, reset it quickly so he could continue. He's putting in the work to be the best, you know, both physically and mentally. He's cutting ties with his girlfriend. He says, if you're here with me, you're gonna get in my way. I don't need that right now. I'm trying to be the best. You know, good luck to you, whatever. So he's putting in the work. He's, you know, isolating himself from everything else so he could focus his entire attention on it. And during the car crash scene, when life gets in the way, he's like, no, this isn't going to stop me either. I'm going to still try and perform it. Obviously, he can because, you know, we all have our limitations. And he literally got hit by a semi-truck. So, and then with Connerly, what was his name? Connerly? When Connerly getting in the way, as Fletcher said, that was just to get more motivation to him. You don't want to lose your spot to this guy. Put in more work, earn the part, which obviously he did earn the part, but it's just like, dude, I want you to just keep trying more, bro. Like, it's literally just to keep him on his toes at all time, to never feel comfortable with where he's at. And literally Fletcher, that combo, the Fletcher-Neiman combo it's goated because Fletcher can keep Neiman on his toes, and Neiman's not the type to, you know, feel discouraged. I mean, he did get discouraged, but then he made a massive comeback. And at that point, he realized after having that conversation with Fletcher, saying that, oh, the Charlie Parker or whoever wants to be a Charlie Parker would never feel discouraged. And then when he realized that after he hugged his dad, he's like, yo, I'm not gonna stop here. This is what I want. I'm gonna go out there. It's such a good story. But the one thing, like, it's an obvious 10 out of 10 for me. Like, we said that, but I think I told Jack this the other day. The one thing about watching Whiplash for the second time is that it wasn't as good as the first time I watched it. Because the first time I watched it, it was after I was watching a podcast on editing, and they were talking about the editing, and it was like, oh, you have to watch this film. And then that night, I was like, I'm gonna watch this film to see what they're talking about. And the anxiety that I felt while watching it was, I was peaking, dude. I was anxious. My palms are sweaty for him because everyone's like, everyone hates being put on the spot the way that Neiman did, especially the way that Neiman did. So you feel anxious. You don't know what's happening, and then you're always anxious because of the threat that Fletcher poses to you. Like, he's obviously like a very threatening figure in the story. So that anxiety made the first time watching it like very good for me. But the second time watching it, because I already knew everything, and I knew he was going to be fine regardless. It's like, it's still a good movie, but it was just because of that. It's just not like, first time watching that movie is always going to be better than any other times that I watch it for me.
How about you, Dom?
Joseph?
Personally, I definitely enjoyed the movie. I honestly enjoyed like the shortcomings of Neiman. Seeing of this dude, this random guy who's aspiring to be the best of the best, gets berated. He constantly gets belittled down to this, you know, just him being upset and angry and miserable about his lifestyle and what he's doing, and you know, if he really wants to chase his aspiration. And we got to see that he at some point he did pretty much give up. Like, we literally saw him give up and literally live partially a good life for that small amount of time. You know, he quit drumming for, you know, after the altercation with Fletcher, but he goes right back into it, and we get back to, you know, the harsh nature of Fletcher, and then, you know, and Neiman constantly pushing forward. And personally, I enjoyed it. The music, obviously, in and of itself was perfect. seeing Neiman from being confident to being destroyed to earning himself that confidence, like pushing himself to physically go back, not physically, but like, go back into like the limelight of being the core drummer, was just an absolute bang. And that ending scene was just so good. Like that confidence, I got goosebumps, man. I got chills, man. Seeing like Neiman be the one who to begin that drum solo, and then to bring in the other instruments coming in along. I thought that was so cool. And once that ending where we see Fletcher be happy, that like gives him like that nod at the end, like that, like, okay, yeah, you did it, you got it. Like this is what he wanted. Fletcher basically won because this is what he wanted. He wanted someone to just to become the best of the best, and just not I guess stray away even after all the ways of the teaching of Fletcher. And that little ending part where it's like, or we get like a constant shift in camera shots, where we have Fletcher, and then we got Neiman, and then we got Fletcher, then Neiman, Fletcher, Neiman, him, all that stuff. But yeah, overall, also I wanted to point out one specific part of the story, which I'm kind of getting like different second thoughts about. It's when Neiman goes back to play the drums after Fletcher tells him to just get off at the end of the movie. There's this part where his dad's looking at him, and he looks at him. Once Neiman starts to do that drum solo on its own, his dad has like a shocked face, but then he looks sort of horrified, and it's like I was wondering, like, why do you look as if something bad's going on when he's like, when you could see your own son with pure confidence, he's doing this on his own. He's literally like absolutely annihilating those drums, but he looks not proud. He looks like something bad's about to happen, or something bad's gonna happen, or something that bad happened.
From a parent's, I don't mean to cut you off, but like from a parent's perspective, it's kind of different because we only see some of it. But he watched his child become that, and that's why he's like, oh, it's like he's gone. He's like far too gone, because it's obviously from the film. His father's like okay with being complacent in life, as Jack's saying. Like, oh, just try your best. If you can't do it, there's other places that you could go. And then like his son's obviously like, yo, I'm in it to win it. And then his hands are all destroyed. He's like completely isolated from everything. And then he's like, to see him finally like go over like past the breaking point, past the line of like of no return, it's literally like, yo, I understand like everyone, like all the parents would be like, yo, I'm gassing up my baby because he's the best of the best. But from his standpoint, he's like, yo, what has my son become? Even though it's a good thing overall, but like for him, it's kind of like, I don't really want that for my son. I don't want my son to be this obsessed with something, I guess, in my opinion. Anyways.
Yeah, that's basically the same point I was gonna say. But yeah, overall, 10 out of 10 in my view. PogChamp. I wish, and also they got Grammy for Best Actor or something like that. And that's pretty pog. I like that. It's pretty pog.
Yeah, I agree. 10 out of 10 movie.
Oh no, it was not Grammys. My bad. What was it? Oscars.
Grammys is music.
Yeah. It is a music movie. So am I wrong? What?
Yes, you're still wrong.
No. Sure.
Yes, but also no, but also yes.
But yeah, definitely a great movie. I'd advise people to be careful on how they apply the message of the movie to their own lives. Strive to be great, strive to always improve, but do it with caution, because like Gio said, obviously the human body, the human mind has limits. Don't go pushing yourself to a point where things aren't okay. But with that being said, thank you all for joining for this episode. I've been Jack, joined by
Dominic Castillo
and Giovanni.
Thank you all for joining for this episode, and we'll catch y'all on the next one.